Amanda Nunes is the only fighter in history to knock out both Ronda Rousey and Cris Cyborg, and at her peak, she pulled off a 12-fight UFC win streak while beating champions from 4 different weight classes. So the question is simple: is Amanda Nunes the best UFC fighter ever? To answer this question, we will work through each of our 5 athlete categories to ultimately score Amanda out of 10 and see where she lands on the ATHLT scoreboard. And don't forget to strike that subscribe button so we can keep scoring athletes. Given that Amanda is known for having taken out 2 legends of the sport, we can probably already gauge that her fighting aptitude is world class. But we need to go further than the hype of true fight wins and dive deeper into her stats to understand if she truly has been able to maintain the skill across a wide range of fights. So one of the best ways to check a fighter's capability is to look at win rates. Amanda has a win-loss record of 23 wins to 5 losses, giving a win rate of 82%. Against the sport average of about 55%, this is an excellent win rate. But when we compare this specifically to other elite UFC fighters, she's actually not that high here, especially considering that most of the fighters here have also fought more fights than her, with the exception of Ronda, who has had significantly less fights. What is interesting though is when we dig deeper into her wins, she has a KO and submission finish rate of 74%. That's one of the best in the sport. This means that she's effectively beating her opponents until they are knocked out or give up. So when we consider both stats combined, she's not just winning, she's consistently ending fights. However, keep in mind, both Cyborg and Rousey still beat her out in both of these stats. Anyways, fighting in UFC has a lot of technical elements, and one of the most basic of those is striking. UFC fighters must be able to balance both landing strikes and absorbing strikes effectively to win a fight. So we can look at both significant strikes landed per minute and strikes absorbed per minute to come up with a strike differential value. A positive strike differential means a fighter lands more strikes than they take, while a negative one means they absorb more strikes than they land. So in short, a bigger positive number is better. Amanda has one of the best striking differentials in the sport. She's at an elite level of efficient striking. Cyborg is the outlier wrecking ball, but Nunes is still up there in this element. On top of striking, another key technique in UFC is the ability to take down your opponents. The goal here is to gain a dominant ground position, which can be used to land strikes, attempt submissions, or simply gain back control of the fight. So when we are on the mat, Nunes is often underrated. She's known primarily for her striking capability, but once on the mat, she's still capable of grappling to win via submissions. She is sitting at about the average mat submission win ratio for the sport, so she's not great, but not bad either. Keep in mind though, she's not known for being a grappler. What the key point is though, is that she actually holds the record for most UFC takedowns in women's bantamweight history at 32 takedowns. So it's clear that she is comfortable switching between power striking and top control wrestling in the same fight, more so than any other UFC fighter here. Amanda clearly has a lot of techniques at her disposal, so as an all-around package, she's possibly the most complete women's MMA fighter we've seen. She's not the best in any one category, she's elite in some and generally above average in others, and overall she doesn't quite have Cyborg's raw statistical dominance or the dominance some of the others have shown in other areas, but she is well-rounded. She scores an 8 here. If there is one sport in the world that is really going to test your toughness, well, it's mixed martial arts. So let's start by looking at some stamina. MMA fighters need to train their bodies to endure combat for a full-length fight, which can last from 15 to 25 minutes. Nunes has quietly built a very serious 5-round resume. When looking at 5-round fights, Nunes has won 7 of the 8 she has been in. That's an 88% win rate, one of the highest we've ever seen in the sport here. She might not be the volume monster like Shevchenko or Zhang, but when she needs to go the full 25 minutes, she can, and she does it well. What's more interesting here is that her average fight time is listed to be at around 10 minutes and 34 seconds. This falls right on the average time for a UFC fight. This tells us, given her win rate, is that Nunes can fight for a long time, and she's also capable of fighting for a short period of time. She's essentially trained for any scenario, and isn't necessarily a specialist in one way. We also tracked her striking differential throughout 5 of her full-length fights to work out the average for each round. And what we see here is that she basically never drops off, and maintains a constant balance between striking and absorbing in every phase of the fight. In other words, she's just as good in round 1 as she is in round 5, further showcasing her endurance. So endurance is only part of the equation though. Now let's look at another element that's key to UFC: power. One way to look into power is to look at the knockdown rate of a UFC fighter. A knockdown is when a fighter is floored by a legal strike and touches the canvas with any part of their body other than their feet, or if they're in a defenseless position. In order to get someone in that position, you need to be strong and hit with a lot of power. Nunes has the second highest knockdown per 15 minutes in women's bantamweight history, behind only Ronda Rousey here. To build on this, she also has the most first-round finishes in women's UFC history. Amanda is very clearly at the top of the power curve for women's MMA. I mean, she flatlined Cyborg in under a minute, head-kicked Holly Holm, the woman who head-kicked Ronda, and dropped Penne 3 times in their rematch. Yes, in her early career she's been cracked and she's been submitted, so she's not impossible to finish, and that will take a toll here. But in her prime championship window, her endurance, power, and general physicality are top-tier elite. She's as strong as a lioness. She scores an 8.5 here. Dodging punches and kicks at full speed in the chaos of a UFC fights takes laser-sharp focus and split-second reactions. Amanda takes about 2.62 strikes per minute, which means she's hard to hit. Now that's better than the average fighter, but here's the catch. Compared to some of the others here, she's still leaving quite a bit more room for opponents to land hits. The ultimate test of Headspace though is how a fighter performs when the lights are brightest, which in this case would be title fights. Nunes' title fight resume is outrageous. She has the most wins in UFC women's title fights ever, with 11 wins. Then on top of that, she has a title fight win rate of 92%, which is one of the best win rates ever. I mean, outside of Cyborg's multi-promotion dominance, no female fighter has a cleaner big fight record than Nunes. Building on this now is also where the Headspace talk gets even more real. Amanda has wins over 8 current or former UFC champions. That's including beating Tate, Rousey, Shevchenko, Holm, Durandamine, Cyborg, Penner, and Pennington, with a record 8-fight win streak specifically against champions or ex-champions. This is crazy. Most fighters build their legacy fighting a mix of contenders. Amanda built hers by hunting down champions and beating them convincingly. She effectively had a very long prime without any mental collapse, aside from the Penner upset, but she then came back to regain the title and win the rematch, which takes me to the next Headspace metric, the ability to bounce back. She came back in the rematch against Penner at UFC 277 where she switched stance and completely rebuilt her game plan to win. On top of that, she has also had numerous other rematches, such as with Shevchenko and Durandamine, twice each, and won. These are classic high IQ, high headspace indicators, showcasing her ability to adjust, accept criticism, and come back better. It's hard to argue that anyone else has handled the bigger stages better than Amanda. What's also interesting though, is that the bigger stages is where she's dominating, but in the smaller stages, she starts to falter more. It's kind of the opposite of what it should be, but she's still one of the best we have seen here. She scores an 8.5. Amanda debuted in her first UFC fight in Fight 163 in 2013 and retired in 2023. That's a solid decade-long run in UFC. Statistically, a UFC career is brutally short. Most fighters average around 3 to 6 years in the sport, so Amanda effectively doubled that. But it's not just about how long you've been fighting, but how successful you've been across that time. So we considered success as the number of years as the champ or within the top 2, and in this regard, she has fallen within this criteria for 7 years. She had a rocky start, but once she gained her footing from 2016 all the way until she retired, she was expectedly been at the top. Cyborg is the only woman who clearly beats Nunes on sheer length of dominance. But at the UFC levels, Nunes has one of the most sustained elite runs ever. We also tracked Nunes' yearly significant strikes landed per minute to test her decade-long consistency, and the arc is quite clear. An early career Nunes is inconsistent and explosive. Then prime Nunes comes in, with more controlled rhythm as she finds her championship pace. Then late Nunes shows up, playing with a cardio-safe volume, being able to hold the capacity of 5 significant strikes per minute all the way through to a full 25-minute fight. Overall here, Amanda is outstanding, but she is not quite at the insane length and multi-organizational capacity that some of the others in the sport have achieved. Her reign as a champion is definitely worth a lot here though, so she scores a 7. Finally, the trophy cabinet, and this one is epic. Amanda Nunes' key achievements include being the first woman in UFC history to become a simultaneous 2-division champion. She has won the most title fights in women's UFC history, she has the most consecutive wins in UFC women's history, and she has the most first-round finishes in UFC women's history. This is one of the best women's MMA achievements resume there is, and at worst is tied with Cyborg. But given the double champ run and the quality of the names she has beaten, there are very few UFC fighters that have done more in a single promotion. She scores a 9 here. So is Amanda Nunes the best UFC fighter ever? Well, she isn't the slickest pure technician in every exchange, but she's one of the most complete packages in MMA we have ever seen. Power, timing, wrestling threat, fight IQ, and composure across 5 rounds shows us that she checks every box. Combine that with elite physicality and a locked-in mindset and you get sustained dominance. Yes, there were gaps, especially in her early career, with defensive lapses, pacing issues, and the odd loss of focus, but she moved beyond the Rousey era boom and set the modern standard. So I don't think she's the best ever, but she is definitely a top 5% fighter and has very much become the benchmark many are chasing. So with all scores considered, this gives Amanda Nunes a total athlete score of 8.2. Anyways, if you're a fan of UFC, we have made videos on Ronda Rousey and Israel Adesanya, which should pop up on the screen now. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to tap that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell notification so we can keep scoring athletes. I'm also interested to hear your thoughts, so be sure to leave some comments as well. Anyways, thanks for watching team. Catch you at the next one.